Welcome back. This is Sandy with Sandy's Organized Chaos, and today we're going to be doing this really fun glittered giraffe print tumbler with a sunset insert. As always, I'll make sure to put everything I use today into the description box below so that way you guys can shop those items if you would like to. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and let's wake up, prep these tumblers, and slay all day. Let's do this. All right, we're using a big old skinny today. This is a 30-ounce skinny that I went ahead and I prepped and I primed it this champagne mist. But if you don't have champagne mist, you could just use like a light tan or beige or something like that. Anything that'll go with a champagne color glitter. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and block off the area where our sunset is going to be applied. So I'll take my electrical tape and I'll start at the very bottom here. I just want a long enough piece because I want each side of the giraffe print to still be visible. So I only wanted about a 3-inch width on this particular size to be where the sunset's gonna be. So I just took a piece of electrical tape that was a bit bigger than the area that I wanna do, and I'll just come through and trim everything back as I need to. So let me show you the bottom here. You see how tight I got that right up around the bottom there, just so that way it has a nice crisp line for us. Now after I get that piece put on, I'm going to take some 2.5-inch painter's tape and I'm going to block off the rest of the area that I want covered up for where our sunset will be after this gets peeled back. But I didn't have 3-inch painter's tape, so if you just have the 1-inch or the 2-inch, you can just layer that down until you get the width that you're looking for. So in the end, I just went for about 3 inches. So after that is applied, I'll just come through, like I said, and I'll trim back any of that extra electrical tape that I don't need on there anymore, giving myself that really nice 3-inch insert where the sunset will go. And we are ready to get that giraffe print going. So for the base of our giraffe print, I'm going to be using this glitter called Coffee Cake. And of course, all the glitters I will be using today, you can find at socglitters.com if you would like to use them. Now I'm going to be using glitter glue to adhere down my glitter today. So I'm just going to put my glue down there, and I'm just going to take a really soft brush and make sure that I smooth that out really well onto my tumbler. And you do have to work kind of fast when you work with glue, especially around the rim and the bottom. Those always tend to dry the quickest for some reason. I'm going to go ahead and wipe away that extra glue around the rim, and I'm just going to fully load up the bottom and the sides with this coffee cake glitter. Now after I get this fully applied with that glitter, I'm going to go ahead and set it off to the side and let that dry completely. You want to let it dry completely so that way when you move on to doing the spots, the other color glitter that we're going to be using won't get stuck down to glue that could be wet underneath this particular glitter, if that makes sense to you guys. So we don't want to muddle everything up. We want it nice and dry before we move on to that next step. Now after that glue has dried completely, we're going to go ahead and come through with our chip brush and sweep away any extra glitter that just didn't get adhered down to our base. I find that it just makes it a little bit more of an easier process when you go to do spots, so that way your brushes don't get all gunked up with the glitter on the base and possibly contaminate the other color you're trying to do separately over top. All right, now let's move on to our spots. I'm going to be using this color called Terracotta. I think it's a really pretty brown and a really nice base for the color glitter that's going to be going over top. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of that onto my dish here. And then I'm going to come through with my glitter glue and do about a 50-50 mix of it. So 50% of it will be glue, 50% of it will be paint. And the reason why I like to do a 50-50 mix is because this, not only is it going to color the area that we want colored for our spots, but it's going to give it good adhesion with the glue. So we got the coloring and the adhesion all together. I found over the years that just using the paint alone, a lot more glitter comes off when you go to sweep it. So with this, not as much glitter comes off. So my absolutely favoriteest brush to use, favoriteest brush to use when doing animal print is a chip brush. Now today I'm going to be using just this little baby 1/2-inch chip brush to do my spots, but I just really feel like they give a more natural, more realistic look to my spots. And like I said, I like to do my spots bigger, kind of dramatic. And this really enhances to all of that. So for my draft spots, I'm going to be using this glitter called Sun Gold to go over top of our painted areas here. And the biggest thing to remember when doing your giraffe spots is they are just rounded squares. That's pretty much all you're doing. You want to keep them in a square form, but just a little bit more rounded around the edges. So now every spot that I do, I'm going to go ahead and come through and put down a little bit of my glitter over top, so that way I know that each one's going to be nicely coated with our glitter and doesn't dry on me as I keep going here. And another thing you want to remember is that you want to try to keep the same distance in between each spot as you go as well, because that's going to give it that uniform look that you recognize whenever you do look at giraffe prints. So you want to make sure that the distance in between each one of your little prints is about the same as you continue to go around. And as long as you keep the shapes you have, as long as they still have that basic four sides, so that square, it doesn't have to be exact. It can have a little bit of, difference in it, like that one there that I just did. As long as it still has that basic uniform soft square look to it, you're good. It's a pretty simple basic design. It can get out of hand if you accidentally disorganize the spots, because you definitely want them to be in a kind of organized line with just the right amount of distance in between, but you definitely don't want to do them all crazy. That's why I'm just kind of keeping them in a line as I go, making sure that they have a uniform look to them with the amount of spacing that they need in between each. But when I did a Google search, there we go, to look up spots for giraffes, I was actually kind of amazed. There's actually quite a few different species of giraffes. So I didn't know that. So right here, we're just doing the basic one that we're all used to seeing, but there's actually different giraffes with different kind of spots out there. Pretty interesting if you want to Google that up. All right, one more time as I'm almost done here with painting my spots. Keeping a soft square, you just go in a straight line, making sure that you keep the same distance in between every single one of your spots, and they don't have to be exactly square. You see, I did a little one there. I did a kind of a bigger one off to the side, give it a little bit of variety. As long as you kind of keep that momentum, you should be able to do this no problem. All right, I did do my bottom as well, so I'm just going to finish that up, tap off any little extra glitter. I'm going to show you what it looks like so far. So this is what it is looking like. Looking really good. I think yours looks amazing as well. Now, before we set that off to the side to dry, we can go ahead and pull that tape back. We're going to set that off to the side, let that dry completely, like I said, and then we're ready to move on to doing up our sunset. But of course, just like we did with our base, we're going to go ahead and come through and sweep off any extra glitter that just didn't get adhered down, so that way it doesn't get muddled up in with our sunset. So I'm just going to take my chip brush and sweep away all that extra glitter. Now for the sunset, the glitters I'm going to be using are called December Sky. I will also be using ice, then I will use taffy, then I have lemon, and I also have a glitter called lime. Now I'm just going to be using the base color that I have. That's for my tumbler. I don't mind this color. I like the shading it gave my glitters, but if you wanted them more neon, you could come through with a white and paint your white down and then do your colors over top if you wanted them, like I said, more vibrant. But this color I kind of liked. It just made it kind of all blend very well together. And you may have noticed that my electrical tape did peel back my base paint on the bottom there. I'm not too worried about that. So I'm going to be using a pretty full coverage black there on the bottom, so you can't even tell. Now right there, I want you guys to notice that I did accidentally squirt my glue off to the side, and I really wanted to show you guys this. So you see me kind of pull back what I could off of the glitter with my finger, but I'm not going to panic, because I know if I go to put my glitter down, it's going to get glued to my giraffe print, and that's not where I want it. I want it to stay inside of this insert area. So after I got my glue applied down inside of my little insert, my sunset insert, I'm going to take a piece of painter's tape and put it down right over top of that area that accidentally got glue onto it that I didn't want glued. And then we're just going to go ahead and move on to getting that sunset applied. So because we're working with so many different colors here, we just want to make sure that each color has about the same size segment. There we go. So each one of these is going to have about an inch, inch and a half, maybe two of an area to fill in. So you just want to keep that in mind as you're going. And you also want to keep in mind that, you might be using a different size tumbler than me as well. So just keeping all that stuff in mind. But I'm just going to layer my colors on. I started with the black, then I moved on to my green, and now I'm moving on to my yellow. And I want you guys to notice that Every time I apply a new color, I am shaking the new color into the color before it just a bit, and then I'm letting it cascade forward, giving it that blend. Now, another thing I like to do is when I come through to do the second glittering over top of this is I started with my black and I'm going to end with my blue, but when I come through to do my second round, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to start with my blue and make my way back down to the black. That really helps out with the blend as well. Now let's go ahead and peel back that piece of tape. Look at that. See, no glitter got accidentally placed where it didn't need to be. So that was saved there. I'm gonna go ahead and let that dry completely. And just like with every step we have done so far, after it has dried, we're gonna go ahead and come through and sweep away all that extra glitter off the top that just didn't get adhered down. Now, as long as you made sure that you swept all that extra glitter away really, really well, you shouldn't have to worry about sealing this before you do this step here. If you don't trust that you might accidentally muddle up your sunset, then go ahead and give it a coat of spray seal before you apply another coating of your glue over top. Now working in the opposite direction, I'm going to start with my blue first, making my way back to my black glitter. Again, making sure that I sprinkle it into a little bit into my color beforehand, let it drape down as I go, giving us our nice ombre effect. Now, if you'd like a little bit more of an in-depth video, there we go, of just my sunset, I will make sure to tag that for you guys if you want to check that out. And just like with all the other steps, we gotta let this dry completely, and then we'll finally be able to put our first coating of epoxy over top of our raw glitter. And you guessed it, before we put that epoxy over top, and after it is dried, you wanna sweep it very, very well with your chip brush, and then you're gonna give it 3 coats of your 2x Ultra Spray. So you spray it, you let it dry, you spray it, let it dry, spray it one last time, let it dry, and that's going to ensure that every single one of these glitters are going to stay in place, and it will be as pure as possible with your coloring. Your spots will stay, your sunset will stay. I know you guys got this. And I'm gonna give her the old glove test here just to really make sure. I'm gonna rub it around all over the place. Looks good to me. She is ready to go. So I have 30 milliliters of epoxy down there in my cup. I'm gonna go ahead and get that fully applied to my tumbler. But because we did all those little precautions there, you should be good to go. You should be able to wipe this epoxy on and nothing get muddled around. I'm gonna go ahead and place it onto my turner. I'm gonna hit it up really good with my torch, and then I'm gonna let that cure before we move on to the next step. Now, after that was cured, I just had still too much of a rough texture to me, and I want a nice smooth surface. So I'm gonna come through and put another 20 milliliters of epoxy over top of this, giving myself a nice smooth surface. And while that second coat of epoxy cures, we're gonna go ahead and get our decals cut out. I got both the font and the giraffe right off of, there we go, Creative Fabrica. I'll make sure to put those in the description box for you guys. But this is actually one of my favorite fonts. I've used this for some years now. This is called Ander font. And all I did was type in stand tall and dream big. You can obviously have it say whatever you would like, you know, because since we're doing it up ourselves here. And I just made that the width that I need to, or the measurements that I need to for this particular size. So I did it almost 7 inches in length and just a little bit over 1 inch in width, or height rather. Now for the giraffe, I did have to unlock it a bit to get the measurements the way that I wanted. I wanted it to be a bit longer than it was whenever I downloaded it. So you don't want to fuss with it too much because you could distort the image. So just stretch it as much as you can without distorting it, so that way you can have it fill in as much as possible. So I just wanted that about the same as well, almost 7 inches in height, and then no more than 3 inches in width, because I didn't want it to extend too much further past the insert that we had given ourselves. And for the giraffe silhouette, I'm just going to use a basic black. And for the quote, I'm using this really pretty yellowish beige color. It's like an opal vinyl. Now that our decals are ready to go and our tumbler is nice and cured, we are going to go ahead and trim up that rim. We're going to sand down the rim as well, exposing a nice little thin layer of that silver, so that way it has a nice finishing look to it. And if there's any little lumps along the other side of the tumbler as well, this is the time to go ahead and sand that down if you need to. Then you just want to come through with some rubbing alcohols, give it a good spritz, and wipe off all that little debris that you might have sanded off. I went ahead and applied my transfer tape to my giraffe decal. I'm gonna go ahead and peel back the paper backing. And when I apply my decals like this, I have to stand it up. So I went ahead and stood it up, and I just wanted to make sure, I didn't mind that if a little bit got overlapped on one side. I know for sure I didn't want his face to overlap on the opposite side. You don't want that. You don't want to have to cut his face. So if I had to cut the back side of the neck off a little bit to make it fit, that's perfectly fine. And I wanted the neck to reach all the way down into the black area as well to kind of blend a little bit better. So that's all you pretty much want to do when you lay down your giraffe. So here I am coming through and just tracing with my X-Acto knife straight down the line and peeling back that extra vinyl that I don't need. And for the words, I did the same. I have my transfer tape, peeled off the paper backing, and then I'm just going to fill it in where I would like to, which I wanted that to run right along the one side of the giraffe here. So I'll just make sure I cut the Dream Big portion off so that way I could fit it without overlapping over top of his face too much. And because typically when I work with opal vinyl, I don't like to overlap it over top of something that could crease my opal vinyl, because you'll be able to see that. But because this is such a slight crease in there, you can't even really see where it dents to form over top of the giraffe's head. So I didn't mind that at all. But typically if you're working with a lot of opal vinyl and you need to, it might get creased over top of something else that you're doing, you want to make sure you put a coat of epoxy over top and then put your opal vinyl over top. But with this, in this case, we didn't need to do that. Now for the pinstriping, I actually had a ton of this pink pinstriping left from another project I did last year with you guys, and I thought it went really well with the coloring of everything, so I'm just going to use that. So I'm just going to apply my pinstriping to each side and along the bottom as well. Now when applying it to that bottom line, because it is like right on that curve, how I had the seam here, after you get this down, you just really want to come through and make sure that it is firmly pressed down against your tumbler so that way it doesn't lift up after you apply your finishing coats of epoxy. But speaking of finishing coats of epoxy, that's all that's left to do. Apply your finishing coats and she is good to go. Whether you take this design and duplicate it as is, or you take it and let it inspire you to create something that is completely your own, I hope that you guys had a lot of fun watching this tutorial today. Again, if you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time.